Hello, this is Mark Roberts from Red Hat, and I'm presenting to you today on Code Ready Workspaces and something called ODO for Developer Experience. Now, this is an introduction to the OpenShift platform. It shows how OpenShift is built on a base of Red Hat Enterprise Linux Core OS to give you an extremely secure platform upon which to sit all the various Kubernetes services. And then there's various cluster services, application services, and developer services that sit on top of the platform. And the focus of today's short session is in that top right corner on Code Ready Workspaces, which is an IDE for developers to work in. And as you'll see shortly, it provides you with a complete integrated environment of an editor, debug, terminal windows, various different tools and integrations that you can use to make your life as a developer easier. But the entire thing runs in a container on an OpenShift platform. So it gives you really high density of developer terminal access for a huge team of developers. It gives you really high degree of security in that the content is all held within the OpenShift platform. So it's not downloaded onto a laptop at all. And so as a result, it's very secure. Now, the second part of this presentation is around ODO, which is a simplified way of working with an OpenShift platform to create applications very quickly. So if you're a developer, you need certain resources to do your job. You've got project source code, you've got language dependencies, developer tools, all the different commands and operations that you need to become operational. And bear in mind that not everybody is the same level of skill within the team. There will be more junior members of the team that don't know all of those commands and shortcuts and tips and tricks that you need to be productive to find the information you need. So if a more senior person within the team and someone more experienced can provide some of those commands and tools and techniques that they need, make them available quickly and easily, then that would be really advantageous to do. And we need the operating system upon which we want things to sit. We want to make sure everything is up to date and all use the same versions of everything. So where do we manage all these various different things? Well, some of the assets are managed in a Git repository in terms of our source code. Some of the commands and tools and developer environment is managed within the IDE. And then you've got the operating system and the platforms that you'll use to test things all managed on the laptop. So there's huge scope there for great variance in what all these things look like in terms of how they will operate on each individual person's machine. So traditionally, sharing this information via a laptop is quite difficult. Obviously, the source code is shareable with everyone. That's quite straightforward. Commands and tools you can make generally available in scripts that you could probably put into your project source code repositories. That's reasonably easy to share. But things like the operating systems and laptops and things are quite hard to share and make it secure within that environment. So the Code Ready Workspace encompasses all of this and makes it much easier to create the environment, to make sure that it is consistent across the entire team, and it's very easy to get people up and running quickly in a matter of minutes, as you will see, and you can do things very easily to create that consistency that you want. So the age-old problem of, well, it works fine on my machine, must be something wrong with your environment, that goes completely out of the window because everybody's environment is exactly the same because we're all using the same experience within a containerized development environment. So the Code Ready Workspace provides a number of things for us. We have the web-based IDE based on Eclipse Che. We've got various collaborative development tools available to us, including an integrated CI/CD platform. And we've got things like the OpenShift ODO that we can use as well to provide us an alternative command line interface, as you'll see shortly. But if you've got various plugins that you want to use from things like VS Code, Azure DevOps, and etc., then you can add those into this environment as well. So it's very easy to bring your own plugins. There are a number of plugins that are available that can be used within the environment, as you will see. So it's a containerized workspace. We have DevOps integrations available to make it easy to work with things like Git notifications, manage the build process, and we have full protection of that source code. So you have access to your source code, but none of it's landing on a laptop. And if we ever get the opportunity to travel again, obviously those laptops will be on trains, on aeroplanes, in cars. And as a result, they are not the most secure things in the world. And the last thing you want is to have your precious source code disappear on a lost machine. And finally, to give you a quick look at what it looks like, this is Code Ready Workspaces in operation. But enough of the screenshots. Let's get to actually show you some of this in operation. Okay. Now, I have a number of environments that I can use that I want to use today. One I'm going to create right now. And this shows a Git repository for a team of developers who are working on this together. And there's a README file here that someone within the project team has put together to make it easy for new developers to get up and running. So we give them a Git repository URL. And within there, we have this option here to click on this button that says Start the Workspace, my developer workspace. And this will actually point us to a URL that's shown underneath, which has the Code Ready Workspace unique URL for the cluster that we are working on right now. And then on the end, we have the URL of where the content is held. So effectively, we're pointing at ourselves. The important file that exists within here is this dev file. And I'm going to go and hit the button now and get this started. So I'm going to open that link in a new tab. And it wants me to log in. So I'm going to log in as user 2, put in my password to authenticate to the OpenShift cluster and log in there. And let's not record passwords. And that's starting the process of a nice relaxing animation that we can see to watch this crane in operation, building out the environment. You'll see a terminal window appear here on the right-hand side in a second or two as different things happen as it's building out the environment. But this is a good opportunity to show you what it's actually building for us. And I can show you that based on the fact that it's just opened up this dev file here. So we have a file here called devfile.yaml. And if we point Code Ready Workspace at a Git repository, it's going to look for a file called devfile.yaml in the root of that Git repository. So if we have a look at that file, quite complicated. There's a fair amount of stuff in here that's been put together by a development team over a period of time. You don't create one of these things just straight off the bat. You incrementally add to it as new assets are created within your project space. So there's various things in here in terms of referencing certain plugins that are going to be used. There's certain images that are going to be used, and there are commands that are going to be used. So here we've got start dev mode Quarkus backend. It's an executable. It shows us the command that's going to be executed. It's going to run a Maven compile, and it's going to run in a particular location. So it's building out the assets that will be required to allow the team to start the application running within that environment. We've now got our development environment created, and we have our file explorer on the left-hand side that I can use to browse through the set of files that exist within the environment. We've got the ed main part of the screen given over to the editor. Now, so press F1, then I get these pop-up options that show me a number of commands that are available with shortcut keys on the right-hand side for the most common ones. But if there's a particular function that I want to use, then I can just start typing and it will offer me all the choices associated with that command. So it's good if you know what you want to do, but you don't know the exact command. That can be really useful to get to these shortcut commands. Now, if I take that out completely, I can put a file name in there or a partial file name, and then I can click on a file and open it up in the editor. The left-hand side panel will then show me where that file is within the tree, which is quite nice as well. And I can start editing, which is really nice. And this is a Quarkus application, so the environment's just caught up with itself and shown me the Quarkus development tool, getting started sort of guide, some help and tips of where you can get information about developing Quarkus-based applications, which is what this is, on Eclipse J. I'm going to close that window because now what I want to do is I want to start my application running. I'm going to start the Quarkus backend in developer mode. So I click on there and that will start it up, runs a Maven build, which is quite quick. And then I'll get some pop-ups on the right-hand side that I can select. So I don't want to open that link, but I'll open this in preview mode. And that's going to show me my application actually running, which is fantastic. Now, I also want to open up my Node.js front-end application in developer mode. And that's going to allow me to have automatic replacement of my running application as I make changes to my code, as you'll see in a second. So I'm going to start off now just by putting in some text in here. This is some content. Submit that, and I have a message. Great. But actually, I want the title part here that says another message to be in uppercase letters. So on the function here that does the get title, I'm going to do a to uppercase on that. And that's going to translate that, return that title in uppercase letters. Fantastic. So let's now just refresh the application. And there it is in uppercase letters. So we have this wonderful developer mode, live code replacement within the running app, which is great for a developer because as I make changes to the code, I can immediately see the impact that that has. Now, I can also debug the application within here as well. So let's put a breakpoint in my application there. Here and run start debugging. And that puts me into the debug window on the left-hand side there. And now if I refresh, we're going to hit the breakpoint. And I can open up my local variables in here, and I can see the value of the content variable. And I'm just going to put on the end of here, debug in capital letters. So I've changed that value. Let's get rid of that breakpoint now because I don't need it, and continue to run the application. And there you go. We have debug on the end of that message. I have another environment available to me as well. So I'm going to log in here as user 1, put in my password for OpenShift. Okay, so that's created a new workspace in which we're going to do the next phase of work. Gives us this nice welcome to your workspace message, which shows a few commands that are typically required. We'll close that window down for now. Now, we have some simple code in here within the source directory. And I just want to make some really simple changes to this code. Okay, so first off, let's just show the Git integration to what happens in here. And all I'm going to do as a code change within this application is start to put some dashes in here. But watch what happens in the sort of left-hand side area of the screen as I do this. It automatically saves the content within here if we switch on autosave. So let's switch on autosave. So there you go. It automatically saves and we get a Git notification that something has happened. When we've got edits that need to be saved, you'll see a little white pop-up, a white circle pop-up next to the name. So if I put some more dashes in here, you'll see that the little white circle appears and then it saves very, very quickly. So your edits in here are not out of date for very long at all. So it shows the modification here of which file has been changed and which directory tree has been changed. We can go into the Git repository in here and I can see what's changed within the file. So it shows me this working tree comparison between the old version on the left with the red highlight and the new version on the right with the sort of green color highlight. So I'll get rid of that tree. Now I can then stage this particular change and I can put a comment in here. Just call it a small change and I can control and enter to commit that. Now down the bottom sort of left of the screen you can see there a 1 or arrow pointing up. That means there is one change to push to the Git repository. So I click on that and that starts the process of pushing to the Git repository. Will take updates from this particular user within this session here. Okay, so that's the Git changes done. A few more things of interest to show you here is one is how we can interact with OpenShift. If we open up the workspace in this one, we can open up a terminal. And the terminal that's been used here, or the terminal that's been used to create this code-ready workspace environment, contains quite a lot of assets. It's one that we put together for a developer experience workshop within Red Hat in the UK. And within here, I have the OC command line. Fantastic. I also have the ODO that we're going to have a look at in a second. And I also have TKN for Tekton and KN for Knative. So I've loaded up into this developer environment here lots and lots of command line utilities. Bearing in mind, if everybody on the project team uses the same Code Ready Workspace definition file, they're all going to get that exact same definition. And let me show you in the editor the dev file that's been used to create this. So if I open up my editor now and show you the developer file, what you'll see here is key.io/marrober for Mark Roberts /devx-terminal4, the terminal that's been used to create the terminal that's being used in the bottom of the screen here. To use that particular terminal, feel free. It's completely freely available at key.io/marrober/devx-terminal. It's a container image. It runs on OpenShift as it is right now, and you can make use of it if you wish. Now, if I look at who I am at the moment, I'm actually logged in as a system account that's been used to create the Che environment. So I don't want that. I want to log in as a proper user. So I have an option over here to log in to OpenShift. And in here, I'm going to put my credentials. And that's now logged me in. I can close that window and have run the OC who am I at the bottom of the screen again. I'm now logged in as user one. Fantastic. I can actually start to do something useful. Now, the specific things that I want to do now are I want to create a project and I want to use ODO. Now, ODO is a really nice, simple tool. Let me just show you this on a couple of slides before we actually dive into it. So here we go. So here is OpenShift ODO or ODO, and it's a really simple developer interface. It's a Git-like interface in that people are familiar with Git push. And with Git push, what happens is you use Git commands to prepare some content to begin with. You'll do your staging, you'll do your commit, and then you'll finally do a Git push to push that into an environment and share it with other users. Here with ODO, we do similar things. So in the red commands here, you can see ODO create to create a Node.js application. ODO URL create to create a URL that can be used to access the application. Then we do an ODO push, and that pushes it up into OpenShift. It uses the source to image compile process of OpenShift to create the application, which is fantastic. And it's really easy to use, very simple commands for developers to learn. So let's project. -1, and that's creating the new project. Okay. Now I then want to go and create use ODO to create the application. So I'm going to do an ODO create. It's a Node.js application. I'm going to call it Node App REST User 1. I'm going to expose port 8080, and I'm going to use the source to image build process. Now that creates the initial definition of that file. It creates me a .odo directory, and in there is a file called config.yaml that contains definition information based on the command that I just put in. Let's clear that. So the next thing I want to do is create a URL, and I'm going to do an ODO URL create. I'm going to call this URL node app rest, and it's for port 8080. And that adds in the URL section to this command. So in reality, you could construct this type of file by hand and then do the next phase. And the next phase of interest is called ODO push. Now, before I do that, what I actually want to do is go to the cluster, user 1, go to my sandbox user 1.1, and it's developer mode, and I have no content in here at all. Okay, so let's go back in here to our Code Ready Workspace and do an ODO push. And that starts to create content. And there we have it. There's my application that has started to be created. And I can have a look at it. It's pending. It's creating the container image. It's created the service and the route. I can watch the progress of it within here, within the terminal of Code Ready Workspace, using the ODO command. And that's it. That's completed. So I can now test this by using curl and this particular URL. Let's grab that URL, copy that, Let's paste that. And there we go. We have our simple REST interface. And it has that long line of dashes like we saw earlier on. Now, if I recall that and put /health on the end, it's going to fire off to the health probe that exists. You can just see the URL there, and it's going to respond with how long it's been running for in seconds. So the app has now been running for 39 seconds. Now, I don't particularly like all this long line of dashes here. I want to change that. But I don't want to have to go through the ODO push every time I make a change. So instead, I'm going to use this on the right-hand side here. I have something called ODO watch. And if I run ODO watch, it starts waiting for something to happen in the project. Now, it's kind of important here to look at the setting I have for autosave. I have autosave turned on. Now, the autosave in CodeReady Workspace is quite fine-grained in that it will spot changes very quickly and save the file, and then spot more changes very quickly. You might not want that level of granularity here, so I'm going to take off autosave in this environment now, and I'm just going to take off some of these dashes. Just take it down to 2, and you can see that I have some edits that need to be saved there with the circle that's appeared. So I'm now going to go and save the file and watch what happens in the ODO watch window here. Save that. ODO watch has spotted that something has changed. It's identified the file that's changed, and it's rebuilt it, and it's immediately now waiting for something else to happen. We go back to our command line interface now and run the same command on the application, curl to the URL. We see just 2 dashes there, so it matches what we have. And if we hit the health URL, it's now been running for 19 seconds. So if I make another change, in fact, if I turn on autosave, let's turn that on and see what happens. So let's get an ODO watch. So we'd think something happened then, but it didn't really. Let me just go, and I'm going to change this to 2 asterisks. There you go. It's immediately saved it. Come straight back in here and run that, and there's the 2 asterisks. So it's a really fast turnaround for the application. You make your changes in here as an editor, and your application is running immediately up here. So I can go to OpenShift and I can see what's happening with my application. I could run my application directly from OpenShift within here and see what's happened. Do similar things up here than I did earlier on from CodeReady Workspace. But from CodeReady Workspace here, it's really simple. You know, as a developer, I want to make changes to my application code. I want to see how it runs. I want to see the impact that that has. I want to test it down here in a terminal with curl into the application, or to see how it behaves. I have my Git integration over here on the left-hand side as well. And using ODO is a really quick and easy way to create content. I haven't had to interact with anything on OpenShift using ODO create the application, ODO URL create, ODO push, and finally ODO watch. That concludes the short video. I hope that's been useful. If you want any further information about CodeReady Workspaces, ODO, or OpenShift in general, then please get in touch with me, Mark Roberts, via mroberts@redhat.com.